to welcome everybody for joining us for this webinar today, all about insider secrets for T-25 college acceptance. Julia here from Quad Education will be able to walk you through this webinar. I'm joined with some really awesome panelists that I will introduce to you in just a second. But before we do that, let's go ahead and just kind of jump into what we'll be talking about today. Mostly what top colleges are looking for in applicants, strategies to make your application stand out, tips for showcasing your strengths and achieving effectively, and common pitfalls to avoid during the application process. Oh, I think I can hear myself talking. There's somebody else's screen. So if we could all just mute, that'd be wonderful. Okay, and just a little plug about Quad Education, who we are, what we do. We're a college admissions consulting company dedicated to helping students get into the colleges of their dreams. We work with students as young as grade 6 and help all throughout under our high school and really get everybody ready to get into the college that they're looking for. We have a 98% success rate. So if you're really looking for some help to get into the college of your dreams or really making it into a T-25 school, make sure to contact us and we will get you there. Okay, just to go over who our panelists are today, we have Pam and Jen joining us today. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves, Pam, maybe you go first.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm Pam. I am a former admissions officer at both Harvard and Stanford. I went to both schools. I got my BA from Harvard and my PhD at Stanford, and I've been working in admissions since the last several years.
Thanks, Pam. Jennifer, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Certainly. Good evening, everyone. It's nice to be with you today. Thanks for making time. My name is Jennifer, and I've been with Quad for several years now. Prior, I was directing a college guidance program at a private secondary school at my home state of Maryland. And before that, was directing study abroad programs at universities across the US, helping students find their best fit programs to study abroad. I got my BA in English and East Asian Studies from Harvard, worked in admissions, and did alumni interviewing along the way, and got my graduate degree abroad in Japan. It's great to be with you.
Amazing. Thanks so much. Okay, so we can go ahead and get started, but before we do, I just want to touch on a little bit of housekeeping. We're going to have a designated Q&A section at the end of the webinar, so if you do have a really burning question, we ask that you kind of hang on to it and then type it into the chat box when we reach the Q&A section. We will answer a frequently asked question right in the middle of our webinar, so maybe that's the question you're looking for to get answered, so we'll be able to help out with that. Another thing I'd like to add is that this webinar is going to be recorded. It is being recorded currently, and we will be sending it out to all participants tomorrow morning. So if you want to review, if you missed something, you'll be able to watch it over again. Okay, let's get started with what top colleges are looking for. Jennifer, if you want to go first.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, top colleges are going to be reviewing your academic record and looking for really standout stellar performance. It's not just enough to have a 4.0 GPA. You need to have taken the most advanced coursework that you can that is relevant to your field of interest as you move forward into your college journey. So don't just think about grades, but think about taking the most challenging courses that are possible and available to you. Now, these may not be available at your high school. And so if that is the case, then you need to look outside, max out the math courses or the science courses or the foreign language courses, whatever your area of interest is, and then make sure to take coursework at a local community college or through other avenues that can allow you to continue to excel. This is particularly important with fields like engineering and in other STEM fields. Also, as we all know, schools have been moving at the top levels from test optional to test mandatory. So you do need to be very mindful of your SAT or ACT scores. We recommend that you engage with those tests early. Find out what your preferred test is, which one works best for you, and then go ahead and prep in that one. You want to be, again, thinking about AP, honors coursework, taking your HLs if you're in an IB school to really showcase your strengths.
Colleges are also looking at what you do with your time outside of the classroom. We care very much about your extracurriculars because of a couple of reasons. One, it shows us what you value and what you care about. So the way that you choose to spend your time outside of the classroom hopefully tells us the things that you really love or don't love. It also demonstrates fit with us. So if you're doing a lot of things that a school cares a whole lot about, that shows us that you're going to be a good fit for us when you come on campus. Also, for the most part, really top-notch schools care about contribution to community, meaning we assume that if you're making a huge contribution in your community currently in high school, that you'll come to our community and do the same, which is why we care so much about leadership. We want to know that you're a leader in your own right, in your own community, so that when you join ours on the campus, you'll continue to make an impact. So this could take the role of, or take expression through leadership roles, community service, clubs and organizations that you may be a part of within your school, or sports and arts. So these are the more traditional kinds of extracurriculars, but you could also do things like starting your own blog, starting a podcast, starting your own company. You could be an ambassador for an organization or a cause that you care about, or you could run your own YouTube channel or something like that. So it doesn't have to look traditional. It can be non-institutional as well.
And then in terms of your personal qualities that you bring to the table, not just top colleges, all colleges are going to be looking for your personal character and values. When you're writing your essays, when you're having interviews, if those are available to you at your selected institutions, you need to make sure that you are really highlighting your unique attributes and personality characteristics that are going to enable you to really create a vibrant or co-create a vibrant campus community with those around you when you land at your chosen college or university. When we engage with alumni interviews, when I used to do that for Harvard, I was always looking for something that was really going to stand out from and really show like intellectual engagement, intellectual curiosity, a real love for learning, some kind of passion that is really driving the student, and not just someone who's able to grind out good grades. And so it's really important, especially if you're early on in your journey, that you spend some time reflecting about what that is and engage in different opportunities that we're going to kind of discuss this evening to help you grow in those areas and develop.
Colleges in general are looking for what we call unique contributions. So our goal is to build a diverse or well-rounded class, not a diverse or well-rounded individual per se. So what this means is that we're looking for special talents and skills, whether that's in music or in athleticism or in other realms, for example, the arts. We're looking for people with really diverse backgrounds and perspectives. So when we're thinking about building a class, we're thinking about, you know, how wonderful would it be to have a student from Palo Alto, for instance, be a roommate with another student who was serving in the Army in their school. So that diversity of perspective is something that we really care about, because we assume that as much learning is happening outside of the classroom as it is within the classroom. We're looking for students who are going to be able to overcome adversity. So we assume that college is a stressor. Even if you're going to college right down the street from where you live, it's a new environment, you're meeting new people, and you're going to meet a lot of people who disagree with you, maybe sometimes very vehemently. So we want to see that you can overcome and cross and make bridges across those differences. That's what the personal qualities that Jennifer was talking about alludes to in some ways. So these are the things that, on top of academics and extracurriculars and personal qualities, colleges are also looking for.
Now, in the next section of our presentation, we're going to be exploring different strategies and how you can make your application stand out. The first one is to really be focusing in on how you can create a compelling personal statement. For the schools that are using the Common Application, you'll be sending an essay of 650 words to each institution that you're applying to. The same one goes to each, unless, like some of my more ambitious students, you write a couple of different personal statements for various colleges. There are also schools that are not on the Common App that are still going to have these personal statements and essays where they ask you to really reflect on who you are as a person and something that really makes you stand out in a unique way, whether it's applying to the University of California system, to MIT, to Rutgers, any other number of schools. Georgetown has some very specific essays as well. And so as you're engaging in that process, our goal is to help you really craft and fine tune and polish your personal statement so that it still carries your authentic voice, but it carries it in a unique way that we know, we don't see this kind of topic every day. So that's some of the work that I'm engaging with right now in my rising seniors, is choosing the topics, sort of exploring different options and figuring out which one is going to not overlap with your academic and research interests, but really talk about who you are as a person.
Another way to make your application stand out is to highlight your extracurriculars. So you don't want to think of this section, your activities list, as a laundry list of things that you've done, but think about crafting your brand or building your persona, your application persona. So when I'm looking through a file, I've got 7 minutes to read a file. So instead of me having to figure out what is the student all about, it's easier if from the get-go you describe your activities in a way that's very consistent with the values that you're trying to show me. So if you're somebody who's very creative, then show me from the get-go what those activities are that give me evidence of your creativity. So you want to do things like quantify your accomplishments. So at the University of California system, I'll use them as an example. If you don't put the numbers down, meaning you helped 500 students through an after-school tutoring program that you started, they assume the worst. So meaning they're trained to give you the lowest number possible because you didn't say so, and they don't know how else to interpret that. So you want to use the numbers and statistics to your advantage, meaning give them the numbers that you helped. If it was 2 people, maybe you don't want to say that. But if it was 200 people or 2,000 people, definitely put that on there. Other things that you want to do are using specific examples, especially for things that are very common. So I read a lot that students who are editors-in-chief will say, I helped put the paper to publication, I oversaw how other writers submitted their articles. But that's what an editor-in-chief does, so I don't need to know that. I want to know specifically, what did you do as editor-in-chief? How did you make an impact? How was your reign or your leadership different than other editors-in-chief? You want to show commitment over time. Ideally, we call them junior joiners. So junior joiners are students who have realized, oh my goodness, I'm going to be applying to the school really, really shortly. I really don't have much of an activities list. So I'm going to start joining all of these clubs in 11th grade. Ideally, would like to see commitment over time and depth of commitment. So meaning those hours per week and the weeks per year. If you're saying to me, I care so much about climate change, but then you've done one beach cleanup one time over the summer, that really doesn't show me that you care a whole lot about climate change. So that's what we mean by showing long-term commitment.
Another area of your application that's going to be very carefully read is your recommendation letters from teachers who know you well and have worked in depth with you. For the main 2 letters that most institutions require, you definitely need to have a classroom teacher, someone who's preferably had you in your junior year. If they're going to only be teaching you in 12th grade, they're not going to have very much basis to write a compelling letter about you, unless they've also known you in another capacity earlier on. So there's some flexibility there. Maybe you've had a club advisor throughout who then becomes your teacher, but you really need to have not only excelled academically in their class, but also that they have gotten to see you grow and they've gotten to see you contribute to the life of the school of which you're a part. When you ask for the letters of recommendation, you definitely want to also provide what's commonly called a brag sheet or a summary of your accomplishments. Some teachers will ask to see drafts of your essays as you work through the application process. Many are so overwhelmed that they just want the basics to add on to information that they might not have, at their fingertips, that they're going to add on to what they do know about you. Each teacher is going to have his or her own way of dealing with that request. So some have web forms, some ask you to just bring it into them. You just want to ask to find out what is your specific manner of getting this information. And then you want to follow up with a confirmation email that, thank you so much for agreeing to write my letter of recommendation. We generally advise that these conversations happen in the junior spring prior to the summer break, so that you're not just running in their door in October needing letters. And then you want to, kind of remind them in the fall when you see them again. And then after everything is said and done, make sure to write a thank you note and express your gratitude for what they've done for you.
So colleges care a whole lot about what we call yield. So yield is when you admit a number of people in the class and they agree to come. So one way that we figure out whether or not you're going to yield, meaning you'll say yes if we offer you an offer of admission, is demonstrating interest in our college. So it doesn't mean that you have to do things like go to campus visits or tours. I know they're expensive. I was from Australia. It would have been really difficult. It can be doing things like, so when they send you an email, they can actually track every single thing in their software. So the amount of time you spend looking at their email, the number of clicks that you went onto their website, how long you spent looking at their website. They have all of this information. I know it sounds a little creepy, but that all gets tracked. Even at the very best schools where they say that demonstrated interest doesn't count as much, given two equal people, let's say that I was going through the wait list and I'm trying to figure out, okay, so if I were to give away a spot on the wait list, who's likely to come? I can see how many times have you engaged with the admissions office? What was the tenor of your discussion with our people when you did so? How much time do you spend with us? All of those things show me whether or not you have a genuine interest in my college, and whether or not you're likely to come. And also engaging with admissions officers means that we get to know you. So when we would tour schools, I would get to meet students, I would learn about them, I would remember some of them. So that bodes really well when I'm reviewing the file down the line and trying to figure out who is this person. I guess I met them when I went to the school, but I don't remember. So that's going to be less favorable than if I met you and you gave me a really positive impression and now you're on my wait list. So showing that you've taken the time to learn about me and my school and why we're a good fit makes a very positive impression.
Sorry, guys. I think we're having a little bit of technical difficulties. I don't know if anyone can see my screen. I'm just getting a thing that says parts of the slide didn't load. Try again. Okay, there we go. All right, let's just ignore this. I don't know why that's not showing. But now that we're going to break apart this session with a little frequently asked question that Pam and Jennifer are going to be answering for us. So thank you for that. Question: what is the most important part in the college application process? Anyone take it away?
For me, I consider it to be the supplemental essay questions where you're asked to articulate the fit between yourself and the institution. Just as Pamela was sharing, it's very important for institutions to know that you're not just applying to Yale or UChicago because it's a name brand that you want to have on your resume and bragging rights after graduation and the diploma that hangs on your wall. They want to know that you've taken the time and effort to research thoroughly and that you really are excited about attending their institution. That you have the opportunity to do that in the supplemental questions. And it's interesting because some of them are very similar to each other. How are you going to enhance our community? Why do you want to study what you want to study at our school? And yet each of these questions has a slight nuance and a slight twist. If you don't catch that and you just copy and paste the one that you did from the last Ivy League school that you applied to, believe me, they're going to be able to see through that. And it's not going to work in your favor. So that's why I tend to really spend a lot of time focusing with my students on how are we going to articulate that fit when you're given the opportunity to do that in the supplemental questions.
Pam, what about you? What's the most important part of the application process?
Yeah, that was great, Jennifer. I completely agree with that. But now I'm going to say something that sounds like I don't, but I totally do agree with the supplements and the most important. I'm going to say the personal statement. Maybe it's because it's the one that my students and I spend the most time angsting over, because it is the one essay that goes out to almost every school. The UCs are an exception. But I would say that that one is common all across the schools. It's usually the one that gets read first. And I just feel like it's the one place where you can say what you need to if you were to have a conversation with me, your admissions officer. But I would say there's no right or wrong answer. Jennifer's definitely right.
Right. We're both right. It's all important.
Amazing. Thank you both for your exclusive insights. Now, if you want more exclusive insights, make sure to book a free consultation with Quad, especially as early as you can. Like our panelists were saying, the more time you have to really hone in on your strategy for these applications, the better. So we are offering a free consultation as well as 10% off your entire program with the code QUAD10OFF. And that's because you exclusively signed on to be a participant in this webinar. So give yourself a little pat on the back for doing that. You got a little coupon code there. Make sure to use it, and then we can go ahead and continue on with the webinar. Okay, let's touch on tips for showcasing your strengths and achievements effectively.
Absolutely. So one of the ways that you can do this is to take advantage of an opportunity to provide a portfolio or other supplementary materials that are going to highlight any unique talents that you may have and bring to the table. Maybe you've designed an app. Maybe you have started your own company. Maybe you are an award-winning concert oboe player. I don't know. But whatever your unique gift is, you will have the opportunity to share that in a variety of ways. Many schools allow you to upload different video formats, digital portfolios, whatever is going to be the best medium for you to showcase your accomplishments. And this doesn't necessarily mean that you're applying to NYU Tisch, although I've helped students get into NYU Tisch. That's a whole other level of portfolio submission and the like. What we're talking about here is more like some of my students have applied in physics, but they're also very gifted with music. And so they'll take the time to do a thorough, very well polished recording of some of their best piano playing to be able to showcase their gifts and talents that they would be able to bring to the campus. And then we talk about that in the essays as well. Maybe they have studied a form of dance or other performing arts for a number of years, and they want to submit something like that to really highlight, again, making themselves stand out and be unique. This is a wonderful opportunity for you to be able to do that. And so even if it's not that you're going to be a studio art major or you're going in for creative writing, it can still provide another layer and another facet to your application that can help you stand out.
Okay, so this next one is it's very important to me because I have a lot of pet peeves around this process. And that's creating a balanced resume or activities list. So I would say that this doesn't just apply to the resume, but to the activities list. So number one, organize your information clearly. Remember, I don't have a lot of time to read the file. Students always assume when they write essays, but aren't they going to read all these things about me? I'm like, not necessarily. And they don't always remember because we're going so quickly. So organize that information clearly. I always say lead with the most important things first, and then the least important should be at the bottom. A lot of times students will start highlighting really strange, unusual things that they've done that were ninth grade. They did it once, they'll put that first. And I'm like, why did you put that at the very top? That's a little bit strange. So I would say that make sure it's not only easy to read and organized, but lead with the most important. So think about yourself as a brand, right? Like if you're building a brand, and we'll get into social media next, but what would you want to know and highlight as the most important thing about you? That theme should be running throughout your activities list and your resume. So that goes into highlighting the key achievements, right? So tell us about the most significant accomplishments. Again, you can use numbers, right, to do this. And then think about fit with college. So meaning if you know that a school, if you go and read the mission statements, I know a lot of my students do this and they say, but they all sound the same. They don't all sound the same. So if you look at, for example, Stanford versus Santa Clara University, which is literally right down the road, 5 minutes away, If you look at the mission of the two schools, they're incredibly different. Santa Clara is a Jesuit school. They care about social good. They care about technology and innovation for social good. It's not that Stanford doesn't care about that. It's just that the emphasis is a little bit different. So you want to tailor your application and customize your resume for what each college cares about and their values, so that your values resonate with theirs.
Okay, I think we can all see the slide, right? I think it's just the images uploading. Okay, Jennifer, take it away.
Sure. And as Pamela mentioned, it's important to carefully curate your social media presence. You want to really think about what you're sharing online, how you're sharing it, and how is it going to highlight your achievements and your unique accomplishments. So you want to be active on the various social media platforms that colleges are engaged with. Follow them everywhere, and really get to know just utilize the resources that are out there and available to you.
I wish Jennifer had taken this one, because she used to be an interviewer, so she would know way better probably than I would in terms of effective interview techniques. So a lot of times I start out my students early on prepping for what we call the common questions. So they're probably going to ask you something about school, what your favorite subjects are, what your favorite extracurriculars are, to warm you up. And then I would say, this came from my time at Harvard, but the best way to interview and to practice interviews was to do mock interviews. They filmed me, have someone film you. It was horrible and very, very, made me very self-conscious and self-critical, and made me want to crawl under a rock. However, it was really, really effective in terms of seeing how I came across in interviews. So that goes to number 3, presenting yourself confidently. The person that I was trying to be was nowhere near as, I think, genuine or authentic as when the camera went off. So think about that when you're presenting yourself, right? They want to meet a real person. They know that you're not a fully formed human being. That sounds really derogatory, but I don't think any of us are fully formed human beings. And they also know that you're 17 or you're 16. That's okay. We know that, right? We're not expecting you to be perfect. So I would say that, and Jennifer, jump in if you have any tips aside from the ones that I've said.
Certainly. I think it is important, while you're being authentically yourself, that you are, you've done your prep going in, and that it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. Just like Pamela mentioned previously with the examples of California schools, each of the schools that still conducts interviews, which is dwindling, I will tell you, because it's a tremendously time-consuming effort. They all do so for a different reason, and they have different purposes and different missions. So you want to be sure that you're presenting yourself in a way that aligns with the school. And also, there's going to be an opportunity for you to get to know your interviewer a little bit. You want to have some really interesting and unique questions to ask that shows you've been listening along with the conversation, and that the questions that you ask at the end, as I was doing interviews, were also very important to me, not just the answers to the questions that I was asking.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so next we're going to talk about some common pitfalls and mistakes to avoid during the application process. So I get asked about, common mistakes a lot. And I would say this sounds really obvious, but it still happens. So it means that these are common, meaning errors. I read a lot of proofreading errors, just grammatical errors, words that don't seem to exist in the human language. My student just did this yesterday, and I was like, what is this word? I don't understand what you're saying. Does this even exist in English? So you want to carefully review your application for spelling and grammar. You want to follow the instructions carefully. So the number 1 rule, and I have to say this to students every year, answer the question. I don't know what's going on with teens and questions, but when we read the essay question and I read their response, I'm thinking, how does that answer the question? And I don't think it does. So make sure that especially if you're reusing essays, right, make sure that whatever recycled essay you use, you still have to customize that for the essay prompt. I would say that's the most important thing about answering essays. It doesn't matter how you write it or what you say, but answer the question. Number 3, have somebody proofread for you. Get everyone you can to proofread for you, that all the information you provided is accurate and complete. Sometimes I'll go through the activities list and the hours that students put down. I'm like, if you added that all up, that'd be like 100 hours a week that you're doing that thing that you say that you're doing. And that's a bit unusual. So just double check that there's not a misplaced 0 somewhere.
Other very important parts of the application process are to manage deadlines and the requirements along the way. So we want to ensure that you're going to arrive at the submission deadline well ahead of time, not turning things in at the last minute, by creating a timeline and keeping track of everything that needs to get done. When you're working with us as consultants, we're working along with you to create those timelines and make sure that we're both on the same page about when things are going to get done. And this is just designed to help reduce your stress, especially as deadlines approach. I have to laugh every summer with my juniors transitioning into becoming seniors, who tell me that they're too busy over the summer to be really giving too much thought and time to their college essays. And I then have the conversation about, well, is the senior fall going to be any less busy when you're back on campus, taking your classes, engaged in all of your activities than you are right now? And where can we free up 5 to 10 hours a week so that you can make steady progress towards your goals? It's very important to not save these to the last minute. Common application, personal statements, take 4 or 5 revisions to get them really polished and to have everyone happy with the result. And that's after you've selected your topic, and you might have a couple of false starts in doing that. So we don't want you running in the door in October, although we'll work with you if you do. I've had students show up quite late to the game, and we've still gotten them across the finish line. But if you think about this whole process as starting in the beginning of your junior year, when you're really going to be researching schools, digging in and building that college list, making sure that you know the why for each school before you're faced with the question that asks you the why, then those questions are going to be so much easier to answer.
Okay, so I'm a huge procrastinator, so it's a little hypocritical for me to talk about overcoming procrastination. However, as a procrastinator, let me tell you what I do. I think setting really small goals. So this happened a lot when I was writing my dissertation, which was this humongous task. So what I did was broke it up into little bitty chunks. So meaning I would say, write 1 word. Even with 1 word, that's better than no words. And then obviously 1 word became a sentence, and that was that for the day. So you want to sometimes set really, really small goals. Some of these college essays could be literally 10 words long. Or if you need to, start with that. You can definitely write 10 words. And then you can tackle the bigger tasks. Also, I think that sometimes finding some fun in the process, meaning some of the questions are really fun. Some of them are, what brings you joy? Tell me something that you do simply for the pleasure of it. Or, what's a new skill that you want to learn in college? These are all, I think they're fun questions to kind of think about. So finding your motivation, right? If you're really stuck or feeling really pressured and coming up with a much better answer to something, start with the smaller questions first. And then obviously we're here to help. All the quad counselors are here to support you. If you're not getting help from your counselor, there's the community of people who can support you. So, or your teachers or your friends, right? They're all going through the same thing.
And as we wrap up and begin to transition over to our Q&A section of our presentation tonight, we want to share a little bit about navigating financial aid and scholarships as well. This topic is near and dear to my heart because without financial aid, I would not have attended or graduated from Harvard. It was incredibly important to me to have that support. And it is challenging. It's hard to ask for help. It's hard to fill out the forms. The FAFSA is a nightmare. I mean, let's just be real. Your family has to get involved. You're sharing all kinds of very personal information. You never agree with the outcome of what the school says you can pay versus what you think you can pay. And there's a lot to be navigated and encountered in that process. It can be frustrating and challenging at times. And so going into it with the mindset of, I'm going to walk through a brick wall if I have to get what I need and advocate for myself. It's very important. It's very, very crucial to fill these forms out as early as you possibly can. You do not want to be racing down to the deadline. Some schools will award aid earlier, and then as the deadline approaches, the pot is running low. And so you want to make sure that you're early in the process to get considered for aid. You want to be very careful about taking out student loans and be very strategic about that. I have dealt with it myself. I've helped students navigate it, both when I was working on college campuses and now as a college counselor. It's an incredibly important aspect of the whole college experience to understand what you're signing up for. You do not want to get to your sophomore year and have to leave a university that you've dreamed of graduating from because of financial issues. Things happen and you can't prepare for everything, but you really do want to sit down with your family and carefully plan out how exactly are we going to make this work for 4 years, not for 1 year. Scholarships are out there. Scholarships are hard to get. Everyone wants to get the Coca-Cola scholarship and be done with it. But the number of awards that are given out for these very high dollar value grants are low. So you can also come up with a strategy where you're leveraging many small scholarships that don't have as many other students applying for them, and add those all together and get a package that's going to help you. It's very important also that you understand how external scholarships are going to interact with institutional financial aid. Each school has a different policy on that. That's beyond the scope of tonight's webinar, but it is something for you to ask questions about if this applies to you and your family, so that you're an informed participant in the process.
Okay, amazing. Thanks so much, Jen and Pam. We've reached our Q&A section. So if you do have a question, please feel free to type it in the chat box and our panelists will be able to answer that for you. And we already have one, so amazing. I'm so sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. I think it's Subhashini. Apologies if I pronounced that wrong.
That's Sebastian.
Oh, amazing. How early should students start doing extracurricular activities? What is the look back period on those by the colleges?
So schools are going to focus on what you've done in your high school years. What you do in your middle school years can prepare you for that. I certainly work with students who are really dreaming of a CS major at a top school. And so they are coding and programming and developing apps in middle school. But what we really focus on in the college application process is what you've done in 9th grade and beyond.
Okay, hope that answers your question.
You're welcome.
One question that also came up is how many colleges should you be applying to?
That's a really great question. I tend to advise between 10 and 15 that you have and you can apply to more. Applying to less is a little bit risky if you're aiming for the higher schools. Among my top students and my high achieving students, I have seen over time a trend that students are getting into fewer Ivies over the last 5 years. So as the student's profile this year who's applying to 5 Ivies, they might get into 1 or 2. 5 years ago, they might have gotten into 4 or 5. So it's important to kind of cast your net wide so that you can achieve success. And there's sometimes not much rhyme or reason for why you are admitted to one school and not admitted to another school. There's just a question of fit. There's a question of, my favorite quip is, they needed a tuba player this year at this school and you happen to be it. And this school didn't need that. So don't take it personally. They just had a specific, kind of extra skill set that they needed in an applicant. And they had 8 people that all were great candidates, and poof, this one has one that we would really love to have in our class. I'm, tongue in cheek about that. But I would say that, that's a really important aspect to the process. And we work with our students very carefully, is to make sure that you have a range of safety and target and reach schools, throw some super reaches in there, and then that you'll be into some of the schools that you'll be very happy with. And then you'll also have a chance to go for those that you're really dreaming of. don't put all of your hopes and dreams into that high reach category, or you might be doing an unplanned gap year, and nobody wants that to happen. That's happened to some of my students in the past. They came to me with the unplanned gap year, and then we had to, kind of regroup and see what we were going to do with that time. So don't be overconfident. You want to make sure that you're casting your net wide, and the Common App is going to limit you to 20 schools. That's a lot of applications. Once you start doing them, you realize how much work goes into making an application really shine. And so that, even if a student comes in, I'm going to apply to 20 schools and I'm going to do 10 with you and 10 on my own, that usually isn't the end number that gets of applications that get turned in.
Amazing. Anything to add to that, Pam?
No, I would agree. I always say 10 to 15 as well, because it's well-rounded, and meaning you have, 4, and then you adjust the numbers accordingly for 15, but 3 or 4 safeties, you've got 3 or 4 targets, and then 2 Uber reaches. I know most people like the number to topple in the opposite direction, but we typically recommend not to be top heavy.
Okay, amazing. Another question. How many AP classes are recommended to take to improve the chances of being admitted?
So I'll take this one. It depends on context. So meaning if your school has 27 APs and you took 5, you might want to take more because your school offers so many. However, if your school offers 5 APs and you took all 5, then you're maxing out where humanly possible, and we don't expect you to go out and do more. It's great if you do, and it's great if you can find it, but we're not expecting you to do that. There's no absolute number for anything, including testing, because we're reading in context. And that's what holistic admissions means. It means that we're not expecting that someone from a rural area who may not have access to 27 APs at their small high school is going to have the same resources as somebody who went to a boarding school that might have a lot of APs in their curriculum.
Amazing. Any other questions, guys? Keep them coming. We've got about 15 minutes left, so we have time for a lot of questions.
I think it's because Jennifer did a great job explaining everything, so now they're just stunned into silence.
Likewise, man.
Is there anything that maybe you both could answer, if you were to go back and apply to college again, is there anything that you would do differently?
Everything. I
I
have had a much better.
I have a
Oh,
question.
sorry,
If a student is interested in STEM program, right? So what are the extracurricular activities do you, recommend? I know there's tons of them, but what should be the focus?
Well, it depends on the field within STEM. So, math has math competitions, biology has biology Olympiad. If you're on a pre-med track, you should be examining HOSA and other kinds of shadowing and volunteering opportunities. If you're CS bound, you want to be in USACO. If you're engineering focused, you're going to be doing robotics activities or some kind of pre-engineering summer work and research that is going to help you articulate what kind of engineering you want to do and why. Maybe you're interested in aerospace engineering. You want to go and get an internship in that area. So really, it's very particular to the student's field of interest.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We have a question from Henderson. Can I let my English teacher write my letter of recommendation if I'm majoring in CS, which I assume is computer science?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. Go ahead, Jennifer.
No, you go ahead, Pamela.
I was going to say schools like MIT actually ask for a humanities letter of recommendation in addition to STEM, because they know that given the choice, I think students applying to MIT, because they tend to be really, really strong in STEM areas, would just pick STEM teachers because that's their strength. However, you do still need to write papers in college as an engineer. So they do want to see a humanities instructor on top of it. So it's actually a really, it's a boon to your application to have an English teacher write for you, if that recommender is going to be a strong recommender. A lot of times students say to me, oh, the English teacher writes really good letters. But I always say, but how do you know they're going to write a good letter for you? Just because they know how to write a good letter doesn't mean that you're going to get a good letter. And then there's a follow-up about a coach. So schools like Penn, UPenn, they have allowed coaches. Other schools, I would say they would prefer if it was a teacher of an academic subject, not a coach or a pastor or somebody else who knows you from an extracurricular. So it depends on the college.
Yes, and some of the schools will allow you to do a supplemental, a third application, a third recommendation. So for those schools, then by all means, it can be a club advisor, it can be a research mentor, it can be someone that you worked for in a part-time job who can give the school a perspective of what you're like as an employee. And you have a lot more flexibility with that extra letter. The first two are generally, we generally advise that those are classroom teachers who can comment on your performance as a student in their class.
Amazing, thank you. Okay, any last questions before we wrap up for the night? Feel free to just type them in the chat box. Okay, I'll give all panelists a minute to, or not panelists, sorry, participants. Oh my gosh, I can't speak today. We'll give all participants a chance to write their questions in the chat box, but in the meantime, I'll just go ahead and wrap up. I want to thank you all for joining this webinar. I know I learned a lot. I'm sure a lot of the panel participants learned a lot as well. Thank you so much to Jennifer and Pamela for your insights. They were super, super helpful. And if you do want insights like Jennifer's and Pam's, make sure to book that free consultation with Quad Education. You can scan the QR code right on the slide there, and we will be able to help you out with that. So I want to thank everyone again for joining. Hope to see you at the next Quad webinar. Take care, everyone.